All right, welcome everybody to episode 72 of the Unchained Vodcast. Today we have our usual crew and also Jon, who has been gracious enough to join us to talk about art and art development
welcome.
in CU.
Welcome.
So welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we are, of course, going to take questions and topics of discussion and stuff from chat. So if you have any things, feel free to throw those out as we go into different topic areas. We will be focusing on art. So, no when's the game coming out? We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But we will talk about stuff. And we're going to kind of, I was thinking we'll go through like three phases. One, we'll just start off by talking about Jon and, questions about like what got you into art and working in games and stuff like that, the usual sort of interviewee type things, and then go into art development at CU, the process, just kind of informing some of us a bit more about how that works, because I know accepting like brand, most of us don't really have any idea how that really works. Like,
Yeah.
I have some mental idea of how it maybe works, but I don't really know.
It's super easy.
So easy.
And then we maybe talk about the future of art specifically a little bit,
Sure.
at least as much as we can. As with anything, if there's something you can't answer or you don't want to answer, we'll just skip it. So. To first start us off, the first thing I guess I wanted to ask was how you got into art and game design.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. My mom is an artist. So she was a graphics designer for 40 years. She actually started out like old school graphics design. You actually had to cut out everything. This is pre-Photoshop. You had to create like a template. So she was in it for a long time. But she also did like oil painting and sketches and stuff like that. She really kind of pushed me into that area. So even at like a young age, I was always like hitting the coloring books hardcore. Drawing little doodles, making my own little comic strips, you name it. It wasn't until, so after I graduated high school, I had zero money to do college. So I started working like some regular jobs, I did construction, I did factory work, saving up money, which was a good thing because that kind of puts a fire in you. Like, I don't want to, be using a wet towel saw in February outside or jackhammering in July with my pasty skin. So that's just an extra bit of motivation that I had. Whereas, when I did go to college, I found people straight out of high school still kind of had a high school mentality and just kind of wanted to coast, whereas me, it was just like drive. I don't want to go back to factory work. What got me into games, though, I actually kind of fell into it. I started off in school. I really got into traditional sculpting. So I started using like Super Sculpey, which I was allergic to, and I didn't notice it.
No.
Yeah, like I used that stuff for, I don't know, 2 years maybe, and my nose would always itch. I would always be kind of weird feeling. But to be honest, at the time, there just wasn't that much of a career path for traditional sculpting.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose now it's gotten better because a lot of like old school people, they like traditional effects in movies. Like we got Dark Crystal coming out.
Yeah, practical effects.
Yeah, and so I guess it's kind of making a resurgence. But when I was in college, it was just kind of like, everyone wanted 3D and CGI. So I kind of fell into game design just because it was more options out there, especially on the East Coast. You know, if you want to do practical effects, definitely like LA and California in general, you probably have more of a chance. But yeah, here not so much. So I started with ZBrush. You know, actually I started box modeling and I hated it. I used 3ds Max and
It's
just
the worst.
staring at vertices and it just sucked the
Yeah.
artisticness, you know. And then I kind of fell into ZBrush, and I was like, hey, this is kind of like just sculpting in real life, you know? Except now I have Control Z.
Always helps.
Time savers.
No more putting more clay back on the model, resculpting it. And...
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can see back here, I still have some traditional sculpting stuff, which I got away from the super sculpting, and I started doing wet clay because it doesn't affect me at all, and I can just reuse it if I want to. So I can just tear it down, throw it in some water, and reuse it. But you know, I haven't had time in the past year to really get back into that. But one day I'll do it because I do like making, you know, creature masks and stuff. Something about traditional that's just still kind of cool. I don't know if it's a nostalgia thing, but it's fun.
Yeah, I got into ceramics in college, and there's something about working with clay that's very satisfying. It was a very soothing activity.
Yeah, it's neat.
Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time and area and resources to do when you don't have a place you can go and use all their equipment.
Yeah. I've got like a tiny 1-bedroom apartment here near Fairfax, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, my only foray into art is making my own weapons and stuff for LARPing. But it's the same.
Cool.
You work with foam.
Yeah, that's
with
cool.
like you're basically cutting and sewing foam, so you have foam dust everywhere. So thankfully, when I was back in France, I had a friend who had a big house. We could do that on the balcony or on the terrace, where it was easy to clean. But yeah, in a small 1-bedroom apartment, having foam dust everywhere, or latex or things like that on the floor and everything when you're renting, no.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my whole reason to go to cons anymore. Really, is just to look at all the awesome cosplayers.
Yeah,
they really put in some effort. You know, most of them.
Oh yeah,
it's fantastic. I mean,
absolutely.
I went actually. One of the girls I went to school with, college, she started off wanting to do, you know, 3D art and, you know, game stuff. And she actually fell in love with cosplay. And after she graduated, she went back to school and studied fashion. And now she's like a really big cosplayer.
Like a professional con.
Yeah,
like
cool. She's really good. Like her costume.
Yeah, and the good ones, they get hired by game studios to cosplay as characters.
I want to call her once this game is out and get her to make some of our stuff. I mean, she's super talented. Yeah. I'm going to pitch it to MJ one day.
There you go.
Especially since you're going for more realistic armors and weapons and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it makes cosplays easier first. And then looks nicer than like out of this world, WoW style armor with spikes everywhere.
Yeah, giant pauldrons.
Like stacks of books on your shoulders.
Yeah, it's fun, but
yeah, it is. But
just different styles, you know.
So I did have a more important question for me personally, which is I saw on the team website for CSC that you have a cat. Or at least when they put up the website anyway. So since I properly respect my true masters, you know, when are we getting cats in CU? I mean,
well, you get Kai Chi.
That doesn't count. They have to be small and furry and run around and trip you up as you're walking down the sidewalk.
Yeah, I haven't posted any of this stuff on our weekly updates, but a lot of people don't know this, but in my free time, which is maybe this much. I have been making a ton of NPC animals.
Oh, nice.
So whenever that time comes, you know, they're all ready to go and just shoot them to the animators, get them in, whatever. So, I mean, I've made everything from horses to cows to boar to even a big ass sea turtle, alligator. I mean, everything. You name it. They're just generic creatures right now. I haven't done any kind of like special. Well, I have done a couple like special fantasy type critters, but so far I've just been trying to keep it simple, just for NPC type. A cat. I haven't made a cat. That's probably from Sandra because she loves cats. But I could definitely hook that up. I've got a rat. So, yeah, I mean.
That's good to know, though. I mean, because I don't think that's been mentioned yet. It's certainly been mentioned, like every time Critters comes up, that the game's going to have a lot of critters, but it's never been mentioned.
Well,
I don't think that
we need to.
a number of them have been
crafting.
designed.
Yeah. I mean, I posted some of the images of them on my ArtStation. Not all, but just like a few. But yeah. So hopefully, one day. I know they've written the code for supporting NPC creatures, or at least they were in progress like a while back. I don't know if they got shifted off of it or not, but I know that was definitely on their radar. But performance comes first.
Yeah. Critters are kind of low on the
well,
totem
everything.
Pole,
yeah, piggybacking off that, I mean, like everything in general, like art related, you know, is always secondary, because performance is definitely MJ and the team's, you know, focus, because that's more important. So in terms of art and the look of the game right now, everything is still very, very rough. We're still tweaking everything. We still have to do, you know, secondary passes on weighting for all our characters. Like if you ever jump in the game now, you can see a lot of like stretching and weirdness of the characters. It's just nothing's really been finessed yet, even though, you know, pretty much all of Characters 2.0 stuff has been kind of put in. It still needs a lot more finessing and getting it looking right. And then hopefully after that, we can get our lighting back onto someone's radar. We like to get George on it, but he's kind of our lead guy. And so like getting time, you know, from him to do anything it's very hard, because he's always busy. You know, his time is very, very limited. But having having better lighting would definitely help the look. Right now we're getting really sharp fall off on the shadows. Like you'll see it's just like a really hard line. And we're getting some weirdness, especially with like our lower eyelids. Yeah. And then also like if you take a character and you put him in shadow, you can see the normal pops more, but the character actually looks a little metallic. And I cannot for the life of me figure out what's causing that. I've tried completely inversing rough and spec. I've tried all kinds of different things with the spec map. So it's most likely something to do tech-wise that is just out of my control. But it's definitely on their radar, but secondary to performance, obviously. So as we progress towards the end of the year, you can probably look forward to having the overall look of the game just start to get better. You know, we're still working on hiring people. We've got some new people, which they haven't announced, obviously, because we usually like to wait 30 days, you know, to make sure they like us and we like them, and then we announce it.
Well, I know MJ mentioned it in the article, in the interview he did on Massively OP this past weekend, I think it was. But yeah,
I introduced a new person.
We've got some really good people here, but just we're trying to accomplish a lot with a small team. So everybody gets stretched thin. It's just part of it. So although what we've done so far has been like freaking crazy, got to give it up to them. There's some smart guys, really smart guys on the other side of this room here. I'm telling you, guys and gals. Yeah, definitely. So
absolutely.
I hear them talking, man, and like drawing these crazy hieroglyphic looking things on our whiteboard. I'm like, who are these outer space people?
Ancient language.
What
yeah.
language are they talking?
Yeah, it's funny though.
Usually when they broach on that, we're asking Brent what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah,
Because we have no
That's
clue.
even beyond me. That's beyond
There,
me.
there,
I
there have been
always
a few weekly updates though, and a few wrap ups where they start talking some stuff, and we just kind of look at Brand and go, "What did they just say?
What? English, please.
Yep.
Can you translate that for me?"
Like even now you're like talking about the roughness maps and the spec maps, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm sure no one else does. And
I
It's
kind
funny.
of do because I've kind of looked into that kind of things because it interests me. But yeah,
it's all on how the light hits a character and how when
Yeah.
the light hits him, it's dispersed. So
Mhm.
kind of that.
So, speaking of some of the different things that you've worked on, what is this is I guess the sort of question that MJ seems to get a lot on the wrap up. But what would you say are some of the most challenging things you've worked on for the game, and your favorite things that you've gotten to work on so far?
Oh, God. So I came into this as a character artist. And you see how many characters we have right now? Because
Yeah.
I'm pretty freaking fast when it comes to sculpting, and they realize
Mhm.
that. And just making things in general. And so, my time gets put off of characters a lot of the time to make, environment stuff, weapons, armor and clothing, just you name it. So that's been getting used to. Like, hey, this is my first time sculpting a statue of a dragon, or hey, this is my first time making a lava rock, or there's a lot of firsts.
Mhm.
yeah.
The most challenging thing though is probably armor, having to model it and set it up to where everything can like fit together even when they swap.
I see.
Also having to figure out UVs like that, like Characters 2.0 is all me. Redesigning the UV sheets so we get larger regions, larger space,
Mhm.
while simplifying it. I was taught in school to kiss things, which is just keep it simple, stupid,
Hmm.
For the most part. And when I came into here, I replaced the former modeler, which super talented dude. And then everybody already had kind of like everything set in stone that I had to kind of follow. And so everything was broken down like just crazy. Like the leg was broken down into 4 different parts. The armor was on the arms were broken down into 4 different things. And I'm just like, this is crazy, man. It's gonna take an army of people to like figure this out. It's just me. So figuring out how to redesign that, getting it simplified, but yet still workable and still give you guys, a lot of good experience in terms of crafting and putting armors on and getting it really unique to fit you. It was definitely a challenge. It still is a challenge. I still don't know if it's going to work really good yet. We'll see once they,
They get
really,
into the game.
once we really start making more armors.
Mhm.
Right now we just have like a few sets,
Mhm.
which I've been trying to push them away from doing like full sets of things. Like we need to just make, 50 shoulder pads and 50 gauntlets, and which I have made a lot of that stuff, which hasn't been shown or displayed, but I've got like a ton of helmets and a ton of pauldrons that are just ready to go, ready to rock and roll. So hopefully we've got a task, I think, for our next sprint, maybe to start looking at those and getting them put in to get you guys more stuff to look at and mess around with. But yeah, that was definitely the most challenging, was just armor system, UVs, figuring all that stuff out. The most fun things I like to do, well, I definitely like the characters. Like I like I like making the fear bogs, the golems. Even the humans were fun. But at the same time, I also like sculpting the giant statues and the fountains. Which I don't know if the fountains are in the game yet, but I made a really cool like dragon lady fountain. That was super fun to make. Just those ones where I'm not really constrained to like a UV sheet, like a specific UV layout, and I'm not confined to, a really tight poly count. I can kind of go wild because it's a huge object. Those are really fun for me.
Yeah,
So,
more
they
freedom,
look really great in the
more
game,
freedom
too.
for you, creative freedom.
Yeah. Well, they're gonna get better. Like, I'm coming in not as an environment guy, and when you model large objects for an environment, you got to approach them differently, and it's just something I'm not used to. When I'm used to character stuff, it's all like unique, and everything is personal and sculpted. And with large environment stuff, you got to like think about repeating textures and resolution when you're like a small character, and how everything gets unwrapped in a specific way to save space, etc. So I'm starting now to finally get that, because I'm getting a little bit of help. We've got I'm getting some art help.
Oh, nice.
Yes, which hasn't been announced yet, which I'll probably get in trouble for announcing it. But I got a really talented dude hired. He started last week, so I'm pretty sure he's going to stick around. So I don't really feel uncomfortable telling this, but yeah, his name's Andy. He's super good. He's worked with creative on like a lot of the Warhammer stuff, and so his specialty is like siege. Makes some really killer siege stuff. So
nice.
I'll drop a link to his art station before we leave, so you guys can check him out.
Definitely.
But, like, dude's super talented, and like even he's a really senior guy. Like he's been in it since like PS1. Like he's worked a lot, and so I've been picking up some tips and stuff from him on like the more environment kind of stuff, how he approaches things, and it's super helpful, dude. And we're also we've also been talking to a junior artist that we're hoping we can get her hired on. She's really cool. And then we even got an intern, 3D intern guy who's looking to move up here and just help out to get his foot in the door. So if we can make all that happen, it can really take all that environment prop work away from me, so I can start focusing on the characters, because I got a shit ton of characters I got to start banging out. Well, that I would like to bang out for launch, get them in. I mean, I've got all the giants done. They're ready to rock and roll. It's just getting the time to fit armors to them and get bin on them. And, it's a big process. It's not just, make them and throw them in. But I've got this really cool plugin for ZBrush called ZWrap, which can basically take our 2.0 character, the low poly, who's unwrapped and ready to go, and it'll actually form it to another sculpture. So I can take our 2.0 male and conform it to a fear bog who's like, huge and thick, and it'll conform to his body and keep our UVs looking great. And I don't have to do anything. So, I mean, all I really have to do now is just start sculpting and then using that little plugin to make the characters happen, and then good to go. All the loops are still the same, so armor can attach in the same spot. So I don't have to re-topologize characters. I don't have to re-unwrap them. So, I mean, this is like months and months of work that have just been taken off. And I think it's from some, I don't know if they're Ukrainian or Russian, but I think they might be Russian, but they wrote this little plugin. And I mean, it's amazing. Like I can have it done. I can have the low poly stuff done in maybe like 10 or 15 minutes.
Nice.
Wow.
So, yeah. So once I am back on characters, I mean, look out for just banging them out.
Yeah, that's really
That's
good
awesome
to hear, because that's been one of those things we've talked and speculated about is one, the lack of characters that we've seen shown, and also things like whether or not or how much character customization and stuff the game is going to allow, both in terms of performance, but also just in time. Since we haven't seen a ton of it, how much time is there going to be to work on that sort of stuff? And how fast
Yeah.
it is to get out.
Well,
that's
I
also-
think like now if we get the art side, if we get it boosted just that little bit, I think you should look out for, because Andy, that guy, he's not just sieges. I mean, he can do armors. He
Mhm.
can do whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
you'll see with this portfolio. He's a solid dude, man. Really
So-
solid.
With talking about all the art assets that are kind of already done, do you think there are any ways that some of the delays the game has faced have actually helped out in terms of art development?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of the art side of stuff, we've always been ahead of programming. Like for us, it's always just waiting to get tech.
Mhm.
I've made all of the weapons right now. For example, every sword pommel physically lines up with every other sword pommel. So all we'd have to do literally is just start swapping them. When the tech comes out to actually allow us to do this, it'll be different. We'll actually put tags to certain things. So I could take like an axe pommel and put it on a sword. And because it would have that little tag on it, it would tell via script or whatever that this goes here and lines up perfectly. So that would be a killer time saver as well. It's just always waiting for, well, because obviously they're on performance and not for aesthetics just yet. So, but yeah, we've always been ahead of them. And so because of that, it takes a little bit of the pressure off, but not a lot, because like I know I've got to make, like, it's just me here, just making the majority of this stuff. And so I've got to like be very fast and just kind of just keep going, keep chugging along. There's no like slow days. So yeah. Yeah. I mean, it hasn't been bad. So
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
it will be though. Once they end up catching up though, I can imagine it's just gonna be Tyler going full gray. Yeah.
So did either of you have any other questions before we get into art process?
I guess just a quick one. I've asked Mark this, and he actually didn't have an answer, and maybe you do. What is your average poly count for a character, for a player? Any of the class characters?
With armor?
Yeah.
They range anywhere from, I think our lowest is probably 8 or 9K, and that's for like a light armor, maybe like a Tawatha light.
Mhm.
Heaviest, let's see, what's the heaviest? I think the Fall Court, the autumn armor was our heaviest, and that was right at, I think, 19,000 tries. However, polys really don't matter for our game because the way it LODs. So on screen at any time, you're probably only going to have like maybe 4 or 5 characters, like where you see their full resolution, full poly count. And then the rest, once they're stepped back just a little bit, they'll be down res to LOD 1, which will be like, 30% difference or so on and so forth. And then so each step, we have like 3 LODs on each one. So the further back, they end up becoming like little triangle man.
Right.
You're never going to see it because he's only like 3 pixels big on your screen. So really it's textures that affect the performance for us more than anything else. So, which I know you've probably heard Tyler say this a dozen times, but yeah, poly count. I mean, I still will always try to keep it very, very conservative. I always work with that in mind. Like, I'll keep it low. It's still going to make a difference, but just not as much as texture res. So, like, if you're running like 4K for everybody, then your next LOD would be 2K, and then so on and so forth. So,
are you
for
guys
those
designing?
of us who are not in the industry, not because we haven't had a recent MMO really, but for an MMO in broad terms, what's the average poly count? Do you know?
I mean, it varies from studio to studio, I imagine. I know like Warcraft, theirs is like super low.
Yeah.
But yeah, other games. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
suspect a game like Black Desert is gonna be super
yeah,
high poly count.
super pretty, and because that's their main focus. It's not
Yeah.
it's not the gameplay. It's pretty.
Performance,
The
yeah,
look,
no.
yeah.
Yeah, which MJ said from the beginning. This game isn't meant to be like super beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna
There's
be
no
down. I'm
way.
gonna try to make it as pretty as
right.
Yeah, of course.
I put my name behind this. I really want it good, and so that's why me and Tyler always do like subtle hints. Hey man, what's going on with the lighting? Can we get some lighting love? We always nag them, but
Are you guys designing with 4K textures in mind as like your maximum?
everything I've made has been 4K.
Okay.
Nothing in the game has been implemented as 4K, but I always keep my largest file size as 4K, just in case for the future, if somebody wants to be crazy and just up-res the hell out of everything, they definitely can do that.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I always do that. So, yeah, my master files are all 4K.
I feel like no matter how good the game looks, there's always going to be that population of people that are just like, this game doesn't look good, and because I've had some arguments online with people who are just like, who seem to literally be comparing it with like Black Desert. And you're like, really? Like, I mean, that's like the sole focus of that game.
Yeah, some people want the Black Desert
else
look
compares
with
to
the
that.
performance that that series promising for the amount of people you have on screen.
Yeah, but it's
we
like
don't all have
always
an
gonna have those people.
style computer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like our look for the game right now is kind of like semi-realism, semi-stylized.
Yeah.
How well that holds up in the future, you never know, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just never know. In terms of Black Desert, I don't know that we'll be able to get that.
Yeah, I don't expect
pretty,
it.
But
it's not necessary. I mean,
honestly,
as pretty as that game is, it couldn't keep me subscribing. So.
Well, they've also got a really nice lighting system. A lot of people don't realize this, but lighting is it's everything when it comes to how a character looks. Lighting is absolutely everything. So that's been my biggest kind of thing. Is just I'll make this really beautiful thing, and I'll put some textures on it in Substance or ZBrush, and it looks awesome. And I throw it in the game under some like lighting, and I'm like, oh, my poor guy. And then we got compression on top of it, so I got to deal with like compressed textures, which that's actually gotten better ever since the whole 2.0 thing. Like our stuff isn't compressed like near, because before I think a character was down res to maybe like 512 pixels, 512 pixels.
Oh wow!
It was
From
either
4K?
it was either 512 or I think it was 512s.
That's a huge compression, yeah.
Is what Dave was telling me. They were at 512s, and so now I think we're at 1024s, which that's 4 times the resolution. However, I would like to get them up to 2K, because 2K is kind of like your standard now.
Yeah.
So if we can get that, pushed, that would definitely make them look great-ish. Once the lighting gets a little better. Yeah. Like I was saying, right now we still got some weirdness, with the sharp fall off and the shadowing kind of shininess. But once we can get someone to address those, I think the game would start looking, which George did a little bit. Like you can kind of see some little god rays and stuff coming down now. Yeah. So I mean, it's definitely not bad, but it just needs a little more like finessing.
Just dial them up
I've
to
been
11
joking.
again.
Yeah, since they've come out, I've been joking that is the 4th faction of the game, because every time I look out of the window of the keep, I'm just blinded. So like can't do anything.
Yeah. I mean that kind of stuff really will throw you off. You hit that super dark period where it's just black, and then all of a sudden you're out of a movie theater and just, oh my God,
you're blind.
All right, so if we can pivot a little bit here to kind of the next stage of topics and stuff, would be If you could, I'd really like it if you could walk us through or give us a basic walkthrough of the art development process, because there are a lot of us who don't really have a very good concept of how that actually goes about. And so I thought it would be interesting if we could give everybody just a better understanding of what that looks like through, just the thought of what the concept is to actual implementation.
Sure. Okay, so it all starts with MJ. Sometimes Ben, but most of the time MJ. He'll want something, and he'll give a brief description of what he wants. For instance, I want a siege weapon that can chuck a dead body. So then that goes to concept. And, before it was just Michelle. And that chick is a super trooper, man. Like,
Oh yeah.
a lot of people don't realize how much she does in such a short period, and her workload is just insane. Like, she's got to do all the concept stuff plus all the UI concept stuff and design. And now she's also working on the novel stuff. So we got another concept artist, Tina, and she is just stupid talented. Just straight raw talent. And she's been taking on a lot of that design. So she just jumped right in, and man, she's been killing it. But so MJ's idea goes to Tina now. She'll sketch it all out, and she'll do like thumbnails at first, and then she'll start flushing that out, present it in like little rounds, essentially. She'll tag, me, Tyler, Michelle, MJ in on it. We'll all look at it, discuss it, usually via email. We used to all just gather around desks and kind of like look and poke, but everyone's time now that we're getting closer and closer to launch is just kind of, we're all kind of stretched thin.
Yeah.
So we'll do that round of review, send her some feedback. She'll keep chucking away at it. Usually the final review is when we all go to her desk to actually look and talk about it, and any kind of finessing. So once yes, sir.
As an idea, how long that process kind of takes?
So it depends on the object, really. For the corpse chuckers, I mean, she was whipping stuff out day of. She was coming up with really cool designs, and typically have it all reviewed anywhere from like a few days to a week, just depending on how fast everyone can get back to her. MJ's always in meetings, always, right. He's always doing biz dev stuff. I mean, that man is just like Michelle, like never stop, So yeah, anywhere from a few days to like a week, probably. Then from there, once it's approved, it comes to me. What's really nice about being in a small studio is if I ever have any questions, I can literally just walk up behind her and just give her the annoying tap on the shoulder. Say, hey, what is this scribble? What is this? Is that fines or what is that? And I can just get my answer very quickly. So it comes to me, I start, depending on the object. If it's a simple object, I'll usually start with the low poly first. If it's like complex and more organic, I'll usually throw it right into ZBrush, sculpt it out, and then do the topology second. But usually I'll start in 3ds Max, get some low polys, shoot it into ZBrush, throw some detail on it, spit it out into Substance Painter, hit it with the textures and the materials, then export it, put it into Photoshop, compile everything, get them all organized. Then I'll huck it into the engine, or the editor, and I'll look at it. Once I feel that it looks good, I hand it off to animation, and then they get their little paws on it and do their magic. At the same time, it also gets shot over to Crossmeyer, our VFX guy. So if there's any VFX that needs to be added to whatever, he can do his thing. But ultimately, it would be the animator who puts the rig on it, gets it moving. They'll put it into the game, and then we go from there. We see how it looks in game, make sure it looks the way we look. If we need to tweak it, blah blah blah, then we just do our thing. There it goes. Yep. So concept, 3D guy. Well, MJ, concept, 3D guy, animation, into game.
Does it go from the animator? Like, does like say Scott, if he's doing the animation for it, is he the one who puts it in the game, or does he then hand it off to? Okay.
He'll usually just load it. Yeah, because loading stuff in there doesn't take that long, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually like a 5 to 10 minute process. You know, Bull is constantly working on the editor, making it more artist friendly. And so yeah, over the past couple years, it's really come a long way and made it a smooth process. We still have a few bugs here and there, but overall it's pretty good. So yeah. Okay. Is that good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
If it's static objects like statues and stuff, we skip animation and it'll go to Tyler, and he places all that stuff in the world, and he's the only one who really has his hands on the world editor, which is like doing the terrain and stuff like that. So any like large scale props or trees and stuff, that's all his baby.
He loves his trees.
Yeah. Too much.
I don't know. That's pretty important. There's a lot of trees.
Yeah.
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 Let's see. Trivial is wanting to know when we're getting new textures for Cube.
I'm not sure. I'm not responsible for any Cube stuff.
Yeah.
I think MJ said Cube right now is kind of on hold as you're focusing on the beta.
Yeah.
I feel like Cube's been on hold for a long time. I don't see that
I'm
changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I think they've shifted Rob and all of them onto like the real-time destruction of things. So their focus has been on that, which I think is definitely better right now, getting all that stuff underway, physics and everything, all those terminology that I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what Mumblefish's question is. I think they're asking about what your sources of inspiration are, and your how fixated you are on historical accuracy, maybe.
Oh, and Fav, the old masters is probably classic artists. If you have any classic painter favorites.
Sure. Okay. So Albrecht Dürer is one of my favorites. Let's see. I like a lot of old school sculptors, Rodin and all them. What's nice is I live right near DC, and I even went to school here in Arlington. So if ever I needed inspiration, I just go across the river, and we've got our national galleries of art.
Right.
And it's free. Everything here is free.
Okay.
And so as a student, that's freaking awesome.
Great.
I can go see skeletons and anatomy and like get face to face and almost hands on with like all the traditional sculptures, So for that was a big inspiration, a big help to learn, a lot of the stuff that I've learned. At the same time, I'm from the south of here, and I grew up in country, and I always miss country because going from country to city is like kind of soul sucking sometimes. And so, routinely, usually weekends, I'll get away from computers and everything and just go out into like a park. What's nice about this area is you can drive like 30 minutes in any direction and you'll be like in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And so I'll usually just go there and I'll take photos. I'll look at really neat gnarly root systems or just insects. I mean, anything. But the largest source of my inspiration comes from the 80s. I was an 80s kid. And my cousin, when I was really, really little, and I would stay with him after I got dropped off of the school bus, he would let me watch, really inappropriate movies for someone so young. So I got exposed to Predator and Alien
Oh yeah.
Total Recall, all the good ones. Of course,
Mhm.
Mom couldn't know about it, but I built up
Yeah.
a really strong constitution. I'm watching Alien 2, and I'm eating a PB&J, like whatever. So yeah, all of that, and then just, I guess, I don't know, playing with traditional toys that don't
Mm,
have to press any buttons or anything, kind of builds your imagination,
Sure.
like
yeah.
the old school way. And so, a lot of that stuff just kind of helps with design. Like, you don't realize it at the time, but as you grow up and start getting into it, stuff like that really does help.
I've done that. When I went out there to visit you guys almost 2 years ago now to do the board game test with
It's been that
Max.
long, right?
It's been about that long now.
Yeah.
I stopped at the Smithsonian and went through like the geology section, and I was just taking pictures of all the rocks. Like, this is awesome texture reference, and
Yeah, absolutely.
it's great.
Yeah, I mean, and you can just spend days and days in one place
Oh yeah.
and still not see it all. I mean, they're massive. If you guys are ever in DC, seriously, it's a cheapy vacation as long as you just find a place
Not for
outside.
me.
Well, yeah, not so much.
But
for
yeah,
you.
when I lived in Paris, that was the same. It's like
Yeah, exactly.
I would spend hours upon hours in the Louvre.
I'm
There's
sure
like
you guys have us beat by far, definitely.
not necessarily, but yeah, there's quite a few really nice museums that you can access, and like there's every first Sunday of the month. Most of them are free. Also, they're not all free all the time, but most of them are free, and it's always amazing to go there.
Now, in terms of historical accuracy versus fantasy, honestly, that's not my department. That is up to concept. I usually just make the things they give me. However, I will still do due diligence and try to make sure that I can get it. If something's drawn a little strangely or designed a little strangely, I will try to like say, hey, maybe we should do it this way instead. Or, for example, I made a lot of like arrows and siege bolts, and I did a lot of research, and this was just me doing it. So I did a lot of research on like how they did the different types of heads for these.
Mhm.
So a lot of that I took from real time period stuff. We haven't made a lot of costumes yet. I think we've got like 12, maybe 3, 6, 9 plus the mage plus the fall court. I mean, it's nothing, So there's still a lot of room and a lot of potential to get, more historically accurate stuff, especially for like Vikings and Arthurians. I don't know about the Tuatha because they were kind of like a mythical, but even from the beginning, MJ and all of them, they've always said it's not supposed to be like that. It's a blend of historical fantasy. So they're going to take a few liberties, but I know it still would be nice to get some of that stuff in. And like I said, with the new guy, Andy, we might get him on some of these armor sets, and maybe we can start throwing some of that, at him. And in terms of siege, I mean, that dude knows how stuff works and how rams are supposed to work. For me, when I was doing scorpions, I'm like, what? I was actually relying on backers. I had a lot of backers like help me out, man, like shoot me a bunch of cool links and videos. And I mean, that stuff helped me because here, like, even though we have a lot of museums and stuff, that kind of thing, I can't really get close up and put hands on and see how it physically is built and works. And just looking at images, it's confusing to me.
A lot of guesswork.
Right. Yeah. Even a lot of the armor, like when I look at traditional armor and how it's connected and everything, like Ben is the go-to guy for that. Like that guy knows in depth how stuff is supposed to work. And if that kind of style works with our system, some of that stuff won't really work in terms of how we break it down to have pieces swappable. because a lot of this stuff is just like one unit,
Yeah,
Yet I've got this part. I don't know if they can
that
see
connects to that part. That's connects to
this. I've got these are swappable from this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we can do it. But it's just going to take a little extra work from Ben to get it all assigned correctly. We'll see. I'm hoping to get more historical stuff because I love the way a lot of that old school armor looks, because they really there was some surprising technical stuff that they were doing with what they had. I mean, it's remarkable. So
Yeah,
but,
I've been gone to a lot of reconstruction and reenactment in like castles where they do that every summer.
nice.
They get people that reenact battles
Yeah.
in full plate armor, and they actually fight. They actually dent the armors and everything. So
Damn,
it's
I'd love
real.
to see that.
Some of my friends are trained medieval fighters.
Yeah.
With like bastard swords and glaives, and they fight. They're real metal weapons.
Yeah.
And they fight. I've seen some shields that they've been fighting with, and so when you see that into action, especially as an Arthurian, being able to see my heavy fighters in full plate armor charging a bunch of Tuatha or Vikings.
Yeah.
It's always impressive.
Well, and plus that stuff it's not light.
No.
Like Ben has an accurate helmet back here, and I mean that thing it's beast.
Oh yeah, the whole thing is like, I don't know in pounds, but it's between 30 and 50 kilos for a full set of armor.
Yeah, Kriss, that actually just totally off topic of art, but just brought up something interesting that I've never really thought of that MMOs generally lack, which is the auditory ambience of wearing armor and fighting in full plate. You never hear the clanking and stuff of that.
Yeah.
We get so old so fast. I played this.
It would.
Yeah.
It'd have to be like turned way down, so it's just kind of in the background a little bit.
I think it was Dreamcast actually. They had a record of the Lotus War game for Dreamcast, and every footstep your knight took, you would hear clink, 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 clink. And I was like, "Oh, cool, armor!"
Yeah.
10 minutes later, armor.
Let you down. Yeah, it's like I started playing Final Fantasy 14 again, and there's one of the mounts that is basically mechanical armor that clangs every step it takes.
Yeah,
it looks cool. It looks awesome when you walk with it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and then you swap weapons. You swap mounts because it's annoying.
That being said, Anthem has that, and I don't get tired of that.
Yeah,
really?
Like the heavy thuds when you're running in the armor. It's like,
but that's
especially like the
it's not the clang of it's not the clang of an armor.
Oh yeah,
it's the thud of heavy footsteps.
It's the different weight of the armor, and you're just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna smash something.
Yeah.
Of course, in that game, you're also usually flying, so you're not really having to hear it 24/7.
Sure. I had our sound guy DB turn down the footsteps on our heavies because the clank for a little bit. I don't know if y'all were there for that, but I was like, "Oh my God, DB, help me!"
Turn that shit down.
Yeah. I even sent him links to the Lotus War game, and I was like, "This is what you want to do to people."
So before I move on to my last couple of questions, because we're about at time and stuff here, did either of you have anything else you wanted to throw out, or John, if you had anything you wanted to, anything else specific you wanted to throw out or show us or anything?
Whatever you guys want.
Do you want to do a
I wanted to mention though something Grimslag said a bit earlier, which I very much agree with, is like, it's really cool to hear you genuinely excited about the work you do at the studio.
Oh my God.
Because we always see the same guys on camera, so we're used to them, but seeing you genuinely excited and stoked with the team, and just it's a new perspective, and it's refreshing, and it's nice to hear.
I'm glad you guys like it. Yeah, I know most of the streams I did, I usually will just play some music.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Oh,
most of the
sure.
stream I've seen, you were sculpting, so it's
Yeah.
also harder to talk like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, man. I it's tough for me to like work in silence. I always have to have something kind of like either music or a show or game or something kind of playing in the background. Plus, most of my music ends up getting us banned.
Right?
So,
You guys had to
yeah.
start using some of those
copyright.
free
Yeah,
copyright
Monster
music.
Cat, yeah.
I couldn't. I tried to do the dubstep channel a little bit, but it was just kind of not my jam. But I found like
Right.
Tool doesn't flag anything
Okay.
because Tool really doesn't give a
Yeah.
crap about the
Because
copyright.
Tool.
Yeah, there's a few bands like that.
Yeah, so like, yeah, if you know any more bands, man, shoot them my way because
Yeah.
free jams, man, that's awesome. So I haven't had any issues with them. So most of my time is just like Tool and Jon sculpting. But I do like other music, just to let you guys know. So all my other stuff gets it muted, and then Tyler and them yell at me saying, "You know they can like shut down our channel because of that, right?"
Right.
Copyright stuff. Like, crap.
Yeah.
All right, ruined my fun. All right, so you guys want me to do some?
Do we have
show you
time for
guys?
that?
Sure.
I can
Oh,
whip it up real quick. It'll be not the prettiest thing because I'll do it really fast just to kind of show you guys just the process. I'll just make something really simple and just show it from start to finish. And if you guys have any questions during or after, just let me know. So let me try to screen share. Hold on, let me get rid of you guys. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Here.
cool. All right, so let me pull up this really quickly. So for this week, I got assigned some trebuchet ammunition. So I'll be making these probably tomorrow. I'll get a jump start on it. So I'll just start with this Tawatha one. I guess these are my sketches I got to go off, guys, just so you know.
They're very pretty.
This is my life. I've had Tyler scribble on napkins before.
Yeah, that must be interesting to try to figure out how to do afterward.
Yes. So, okay, I'm going to make that thing really quickly. So let me just make a sphere. I'm not going to worry about the size or anything. I'm just going to go with it.
So, are you able to hold a conversation and do this at the same time?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Can you answer why you are the only person still who uses 3ds Max? What about it over Maya is keeping you in it?
Sure. So there's actually a lot that 3ds can do that Maya can't. Like arraying stuff. Like I've spoken to Dion a bunch of times, and arraying. They just for some reason Maya doesn't have a good array, which is basically like duplicating stuff around in like a circle or something, and getting it looking very easily.
The duplicate special feature is not very friendly.
Yeah. However, Maya though they have a far superior unwrapping and UV system. Like I really want to learn Maya. It's just finding the time to do it, to learn another program and get in it. It's really not on my plate just yet. I was taught 3ds Max at school. For some reason, my college told us that only East Coast people use 3ds Max and West Coast uses Maya. And so they taught us 3ds Max. And I'm like, okay.
That might be entirely true because I learned Maya out here and I'm in LA. So,
well, it might be. Most studios though really don't have a preference, to be honest. So you can know either or, because at the end of the day, it all comes out as an FBX anyway. So or an OBJ, whichever your preference. So okay, I've got my sphere in ZBrush. The first thing I'm just gonna unwrap it before I even do anything to it. So I'm gonna go to UV Master. Polygroups. Let me turn this on.
I know what that means. What is an unwrap?
Okay, so unwrapping basically, let me just hit it for you guys. So let me turn symmetry off. So it'll basically take all of my geo and kind of flatten it out onto this 2D plane. And what this is going to be where my maps are placed.
Yeah, it looks
So
a lot like a UV map, yeah.
Yeah, so all of my sculptural detail, all of my painting is going to be splayed out onto this flat surface, which that is what game editors read. They read these maps, and that'll tell it, hey, I've got this simple 3D object, and then I've got all of this stuff that wraps around it. And it's basically like stickers. So you just sticker everything on. You sticker the sculptural detail, you sticker the color, you sticker how the light hits that sculptural detail and reacts to it, so whether something's shiny or not.
Okay.
It's all to do with these stickers, and it's called unwrapping the model. So that'll be the first thing I do with this one, just because it's a quick, easy kind of thing. So now that it's unwrapped, go ahead and make sure that it's stuck. So there we go. Now that it's unwrapped, the next thing I'm going to do is subdivide this thing. So if I want to sculpt detail on this, I need to up my geometry. If I am to try to sculpt on this surface right now, let me just show you. It's only going to pull where these little points are. A 3D object is made of planes, and each plane is connected by what's called a vertice, and they're at each corner. And so with ZBrush goes by how many of these little points you have in a certain area will show you how much detail you get. So you can see right now, all I'm basically doing is just moving this object's points and making it look very jaggy. So I'll show you the difference. When I subdivide it, it's essentially like doubling up my geometry. So if I come here and hit divide, so you can see now I went from 182 points to 762 points. So it's more than doubled it. And so I'll just divide it up quite a bit. Actually, to be honest, I'm not going to do that for this. Let me show you. I'll show you why. Hold on. What I'm going to do first, I'm going to take this object and I'm just going to bring it back into 3ds Max. Let's see if that worked. Yeah. Because right now it's been unwrapped, it's ready to go. So this is my low poly. This is what I'm going to use in Substance Painter. So I'm just going to export it real quick. I'm just going to name it Treb Ammo 1. There we go. Okay, so that's my low poly. So now I don't have to do anything else with my low poly because I'm happy with that and how it looks. This is how it will look in the game without the maps. All right, so I'm going to go back to ZBrush, and now I'm going to subdivide it a bunch of times. And because this is a sphere, and it's got triangles at the top, it's going to give me some weird issues right here with how it subdivides. You can see these little warply things. So what I'm going to do is, instead of having those triangles, I'm going to sculpt on just straight quads, four-sided planes. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go to Z-Remesher, turn on my symmetry, all X's. There we go. I'm just going to Z-Remesh it. Just simple. It does not contain polygons on the symmetrical side, whatever. Let's try it this way. So I'm just going to run this. This is a relatively new script for ZBrush. I mean, not that new, but basically it'll get rid of any kind of triangles and just go with like quads. So everything is four-sided. So when I sculpt on this thing, it's going to be nice and clean and even in terms of detail. I'm not going to get any weird pinching. So now I'll go ahead and divide this. And so you can see my poly count up here jump. I'm going to get it to maybe 1 million. That's more than enough. Let me turn this floor off real quick. Let me just, there we go, make it see-through. All right, so we've got our sphere. I am supposed to make this root system thing. I guess it's like spiraled. And I imagine all these leaves and stuff, that'll be VFX.
Okay.
So that's Mike. You just got to make the ball.
Yeah, so I'll shoot that ball over to Mike, and he'll throw all this love to this thing after the fact. So what I'm going to do is just sculpt. So let me turn my symmetry on. I'm just going to do the x-axis. So now you can see, let me turn local. There we go. Now you can see I've got complete symmetry on this thing. Really cool. Beats traditional sculpturing.
Oh, yeah.
By far.
Yeah.
You only have to work on one half of it.
Yeah. So I like this clay buildup brush, but it does give you some like kind of stepped jaggies. So I might take its alpha and just smooth it a little bit. I mean, I don't mind the jaggies because I'm going to smooth this thing anyway. But yeah, basically I can just kind of, it's almost like drawing and sculpting mixed. Like if you can draw, you can kind of sculpt to an extent. Let me pull up my reference on my.
Does it work both ways? If you can sculpt, can you kind of draw?
Not at all. No, sir. Yeah, no, sir. Okay, let me go ahead and. I'm just going to do this nice and rough and quick, just for time.
Mm-hmm.
So bear with me. All sculptures look like crap in the beginning, but then they will eventually look beautiful. So you just have to get past this part. And whenever I'm sculpting organic stuff, I like to play it really loose and dirty. Like you see, I'm not trying to tediously get a nice smooth, you know, I'm just roughly adding clay to this guy. And I think when I get up here, I'm going to turn symmetry off. I think I'm going to go a little asymmetrical just to make it cool, which, you know, a lot of people.
Nature is not symmetrical, so.
Well, a lot of like the MMO low poly guys will get on me because they'll see this and they'll see my. Well, let me convert it to an editable poly. Oh dang nabbit. So they'll see my my UV, right? And they'll say, well, you know, you could easily just take this guy and slap him on top of that guy, just duplicate, you know, and then you can make this bigger and get more resolution, which is true. You can totally do that. But then you have to have symmetry on your model. And like it was just said, organic is not always symmetrical. Oh yeah, you like my background?
I do.
So anytime I get a program crash and it just closes and I get angry at the world and want to smash my face into my Cintiq, this
You've got that there. Yeah.
And oh my God, he makes me so happy. Look at him.
One of my favorite guilty pleasure movies.
How can you stay angry at him? Look at him. Oh, kills me. Anyway, so we're going to go non-symmetrical on this and just kind of art it up a little bit. Okay, let's go. And I'm just going to do varied kind of root sizes just so they're not so, you know, even. Do a big one down here. Wow, that kind of comes out a lot. Finagle that in a little bit. Okay. Come here. yeah, if you guys ever want to try a 3D program, I would definitely give ZBrush a shot. Like if you're into art, like you can make some really cool stuff really quickly with ZBrush, and it's not so like point and click and technical.
Right.
You just need to know like a few basic things, and there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube now that will get you there and beyond. So, I mean, that's kind of with any program now. I mean, I had to relearn how to tie a tie on YouTube because I'm not a suit and tie person.
Neither am I. I do that all the time if I need to wear a tie.
That's my sole reason for getting into video games. There you go. I don't want
Not
to
having to wear a tie.
I don't want to wear a tie.
I've been having to do ties since I was 16 for school.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I can do it. The funny thing is, most people need to tie their tie in front of a mirror. It
Yeah.
confuses
Oh, yeah.
me. I don't need it. I do it without the mirror. The mirror actually confuses me because I've been taught by my granddad by looking at him. So I don't need to watch myself tie the tie to do it. So whenever I look in the mirror, it just confuses me, and I lose my my knot. So
Oh, that's hilarious.
yeah,
I
I've been doing that, and what irks me is people who keep their tie actually tied in their wardrobe.
Oh,
That's a pet peeve of myself. Of me.
Shoot, that's probably what I would do.
I totally do that.
I get a Windsor and I'm
No.
keeping that. 'Cause it took me 45 minutes to learn it.
Yeah, I used to tie my colleagues' tie because they would take so long that it would just let me do it. It's gonna be faster.
yeah.
Yeah.
I never had to do that until after got my master's degree and actually started in my career and everything, and then I suddenly started having to wear ties. And I remember for something or the other, like in college, I was like, I have to wear a tie, and tried like calling my dad, like, how do you tie a tie? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, great. All right, YouTube to the rescue. We got to figure this out.
Well, I mean, everything's on YouTube now. I mean,
Mhm.
we save
Oh
like
yeah.
save like $800 learning how to change an alternator on a vehicle from YouTube than having to pay someone to do it for us.
Yeah.
Right.
So
As I was saying before we were live, the little knowledge I have on Photoshop, Google and YouTube.
Yeah.
absolutely.
How, John? How much would you use YouTube at work to figure out just either something small to help improve a model you're working on?
All the time.
Just all the time.
Just because you get a degree and get a job, you do not know everything. There's always going to be stuff to learn and new and exciting problems that just come your way. A lot of times, though, I'll find like something small will pose a giant issue for me, and then because it's such a small random problem, there's like no information on how to fix this bug or work around something. So that's kind of been a thing as of late, especially since I just got a new computer here and I had to reinstall all of my programs, and some of those programs are just kind of like a little buggy and acting kind of weird. And so having to find out some little kind of question, which I don't even know how to word it in the first place. Like, how do I even ask this question, because it's so nondescript and strange. That's been kind of an issue. But other things like, how do I cut a hole into something? You can find a million videos on stuff like that, which has been super great. And a lot of those videos, they come from people who are in the industry, and it's awesome. Like, if I would have had that at the time I was learning, I would have skipped a college degree and got my YouTube degree. I mean, a lot of studios nowadays, especially for artists, I mean, they don't even go by degree anymore. Like, a degree
Portfolio.
is a bonus. Yeah, exactly. It's all portfolio stuff now. If you're really talented, I mean, it'll reflect in your, I mean, granted, college, I'm not telling everyone not to go to college. College is awesome. You learn a lot more, plus you make a lot of connections in college, stuff you can't get off YouTube alone. So definitely go to school if you can, but with the way college debt is, if you don't have the cash for it, definitely try other alternatives.
Yeah, and there's also always the thing of it's like people that fuss that IT people are constantly just like Googling other people's problems to fix them. It's like, yeah, well, if it was that easy, why didn't you just Google it? You didn't because you don't know what to look up or how to implement it. There's at least a little bit of knowledge you gotta earn either through someone else teaching you or just fiddling with the thing and figuring it out. Yeah,
I just take school as it is, and it teaches you how to learn stuff, and then just learn the actual stuff on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a librarian, so for the most part, my whole job is looking up things for people or teaching them how to look up things.
Nice.
And people, it's not uncommon for people to be like, well, we have Google, so what do we need you anymore? And I'm like, I don't know. Why can't you find this thing?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so like I said, this thing isn't going to be super pretty.
It's already super pretty.
Yeah.
Screen. No. But I'll make it, if it was just like like for tomorrow, what I would do is I'm going to work on getting all of this stuff kind of cleaned up and roughy.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely draw in, more lines to it to make it look a little more, let me turn my intensity down, to make it look a little more, woody or whatnot. But anyway, we'll go from here. Let's just say this is our tree, our wooden ball thing.
It looks like one already.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, you can see like just adding random clay and just slapping it on there. All right, so what I do next, I want to put this high poly sculpture onto my, not him, but this guy. Which actually, now that I look at it, I think I'm gonna grab like a couple of these guys and just kind of mess them up a little bit. That way we're not relying so much on the normal map, the sticker. So this way we'll get like a little bit of some silhouette change every now and then. So let me just pop this guy out a little bit. So I'll do this just quickly, just to give it some extra loving, so it's not so perfect. Yeah, that's fine. I'll do more with it tomorrow, obviously, but for right now. So I've got this low poly. What I'm going to do, I'm going to export it out of 3ds Max. Actually, let me go. Selected. So I'm going to do Trev Ammo 1. Yes. Okay, so I've got my low poly. And I'll go to ZBrush. What I'm going to do is I'm going to export this high poly out from ZBrush, and it'll go as an OBJ. Some people will do it as FBX, but I'll usually do it as OBJ. There's really no particular difference. I'm just going to assign it as high, because this is my high poly. So I'll get that started. And you see it'll take a quick bit to write it. So it's done. So the next thing I'll do, I'm going to open Substance Painter, which Substance Painter has been like a crazy jump in the industry in terms of speeding up workflows. Before, I would just kind of like texture stuff in ZBrush and kind of pump it out that way, because you can export all your maps from ZBrush too. But this just saves you so much time, because all the procedural stuff, like you can get in your crevices really quickly, which I'll demonstrate here in a second.
Now, Substance is a 3D painter. Is that correct?
It is, yes. So I will bring in my I'll bring in my low poly. So there she is. And the next thing I'll do is bake that high poly sculpture on top of this low poly object. So let me do that. I'm going to increase the resolution to 4K. I am going to select my high poly. And then for this one, I think I'm going to crank up my cage a little bit. Basically what this does is it'll give you, oh, that's too much. It'll bake any of those roots that are sticking out really far. It'll try to bake that into here. So this basically increases the distance of baking, both in terms of what's sticking out and what's carved in. So I just kind of increase that a little bit. So I'll go ahead and bake it, and it'll take a minute to bake. I've got all these programs running at the same time. So
why do they call it baking?
That's a good question. Google it.
There's a YouTube for that, I'm sure.
So we're all in
Yeah.
chat talking about baking and baking cookies and stuff now.
I am baking a Tawatha root sphere. It's delicious.
It does kind of look like some kind of balled up pastry. I mean, a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Like a meatball a bit almost.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now you've taken all that detail from the high poly, put it onto the low poly,
Yes.
and you're using the low poly count to display that information.
Yes. Yeah. So this low poly ball hasn't changed at all. It's just basically projecting all of that sculptural information onto our little sphere here. So right now I'm just looking, so I can see right here I've got a flat spot to where my cage, the baking cage, wasn't far out enough to capture any of that detail, which it's fine for this demo. Like, see how smooth that is? There's no, I mean, it's fine for this. I can always come back here and just crank it up. I can crank it, I can just do a 0.1 and then just rebake the whole thing.
Strike JK would like to ask you what temperature you have to cook this in.
Right now I'm cooking it at 0.1 3D temperatures. So let's just rebake it. If it doesn't come out, it's no big deal. I can always go back and ZBrush and shrink that thing down a little bit, but just give it a second. I'll throw some textures on here, and then I'll show you how fast it is to do textures. It's really cool. Yeah, all of these crevices here, if I wanted to make it look a little darker, like in ZBrush, or even in Photoshop, I would have to like hand paint, all of that, and hand paint highlights. But in this program, it'll do it all procedural for me. And oh my gosh, it's such a lifesaver, such a time saver. All right, that looks a little better. Again, tomorrow's problem, I'll get in there and really, I'll redo the sculpt and actually do it how I like it. But gotta trash this. So I am going to go to my materials, my smart materials. So they give us a lot of cool stuff already pre-made, that you can just essentially slap on there and have it look like something.
Nice.
You can, and it's just like Photoshop. You can keep adding layers and add different things to this. But I've got like some basic pre-made stuff that I've done. One, like this one's for metal objects. This one's for just anything else non-metally. And it's essentially just a color with a dirt pass and a highlight pass slapped on top. So if I turn these off, you can see I've got just a gray color. Which I can
So the
go
layers
in.
work pretty much exactly like Photoshop.
Yeah, so I can change the color of this to whatever I want. So if I want to turn it to like, I don't know, a brown, something like that. It kind of looks like a poop. maybe we won't go that route. So let's do something else. Take a
Polish
rest.
one.
Yeah, we gotta. John made a dingleberry. There we go. Name of this cream. Anyway, I'll put the dirt on it. So let me. This is just our color channel. I'll just show you that. So you can see the dirt, how it actually will conform to my sculpt and start coming into these like recessed areas. Same for the highlight. So our highlight will go on like the sharper areas, the outer edge. And I have full control over these things as well. Like I can come in here and if I want to up the edge wear, see, I can make it really intense or I can make it super subtle, just depending on what I want. And then I can change the color as well. So if I want it to look more poo-like.
New game, siege design, manure pult.
There you go. We can totally do that. Let me turn my value. See how shiny it is? Let me just crank that down. That's called their roughness. So if I go towards the black, I'll get really glossy, shiny thing. Looks like plastic or something. If I crank it all the way to the right, it'll become more matted.
So it's all based on black and white values and percentages of that.
Yep. So you can see my recessed values are still shiny. So this dirt layer has a rough on it as well. So I'll crank that up almost towards pure white. Then I'll do my my highlights at pure white. So I'll show you what that looks like. I can actually scrub between all of my maps. So here's my color map. This would be metal. There's no metal on this thing. Here's my rough. So let me show you. Let me crank this back a little bit. There we go. So now you can start to see the variation. So when light hits this, whatever's dark is going to be a little shinier, and whatever is light is going to be very matte and very flat. And so by having all this variant, when light hits this object, especially you can see it around here, you're going to start, it's not going to just be one solid shiny thing like it looks like this, it's going to have a little extra information in there to make it look a little more realistic. So let me try something else. Let me add another layer, add a black mask. Let's get some really bold green up in here. Generator. So let's take this, just crank it a little bit, just to get a little bit of that, because I think.
Very nice, yeah.
Let me adjust the color of this, because I think it's got a little more yellow, like greenish yellow. So let's see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
almost
cool.
like a Slimer from Ghostbusters color.
Yeah.
Again, Mike will come in and do some VFX on top of that. And I'll also use this channel right here to make an emissive map, which this color will produce kind of like a glow on its own. So like any of this green stuff will constantly be glowing, whether it's nighttime or daytime. It's called an emissive map. So you'll see that on a bunch of stuff like the crystals and the place of power. And some of the armor has little glowy bits, weapons as well. Let me duplicate this. Clear my math. So now I'm just gonna like straight paint. And again, I'll do this very rough, but just paint that like a green. And there's symmetry in here too as well. I'm just being kind of turned it on. But this program gives you a lot of cool stuff, like get a lot of different brushes and alphas to work with. So you can see I can take this one and start erasing a little bit of it. Whatever. And you can also adjust the opacity of these things, which is really nice. I can also take textures, like real world textures. For example, let me bring in textures. So let's say if I've got some wood here, I can bring this wood here in, and I can literally just slap it right in and replace that brown with a wood texture. And I can always adjust the angle of this as well, so it can conform to the flow path here. So it really saves me from having a hand, because you're never going to get stuff looking real by doing it, you know.
Right.
What better way to do it than just take an actual image? And that's what you see in video games: rocks, trees. It's actual real world photos
textures,
slapped on here. I can also take this image here, and this program makes another program called bitmap to material. So I can take this image, drop it in to this, and I can actually get a normal out of this. So actual sculptural detail out of this program. So I can take, let me up the resolution. And see, I can quickly make this, give it some life. So it's not just looking like a 2D image stickered on top of something. So I can export this, just the normal. That's all I really want. I can export this. Let me go ahead and do that. Okay, close. We're done with you. Let me open Photoshop real quick and bring that in. So you can see, let me invert this. There we go. So you can see it gives me a lot of this lighting information and turns it into sculptural information. Right now, this is a little bit too hard. So I'm going to create another layer and just do a fill, and then just crank the opacity back a little bit so it's not as rough. Because if I put it in there like this, it's going to be kind of hard to look at.
Yeah.
So let me save this. I'm just going to save it out as just as a JPEG. Should be fine. Okay. So now let's see what it looks like when I throw it on this guy. So let me bring it in. Find out where it send it. Turn normal on. So if we throw a normal, so let's zoom in a little bit. Maybe I can make it a little stronger so you guys can see it a little better. Might be a little too subtle.
On average, how many layers do you have on those objects, or does it depend on the size of the object, maybe?
Yeah, there's a lot of variables on that. It depends on the object itself.
Okay.
How complex it is. So like this object, I probably won't really have that many layers, to be honest. But something more complex that has just more to it. For example, like a battering ram. You know, it's made up of a bunch of different pieces. You know, each of those pieces is going to have stuff on it, and each of those pieces, you know, they're going to have their own layers, et cetera, et cetera. A piece of armor. It's just object defined and how crazy the design is. You know, like this one, it's just a little bit of wood and some greeny stuff. You know, this one is just a little bit of metal and some blue stuff, whatever that stuff is.
Now, when you're making that, like the side of that, the green is glowy. Do you have to factor that into when it's going to get handed off to Mike and prepare something that he can work with?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. What he'll do, I'll when I hand him these objects, it'll have all the maps done, so he can take them into Max and slap the maps on them, so he knows exactly where all of this detail lies. He'll be able to slap it on that 3D object and look at it as it is. So he'll know where to put things.
Gotcha.
yeah, Mike's super talented, dude. He's really good at what he does. All right, so let's look at this normal instead. There we go. See the difference?
Yeah.
Kind of subtle change, but you can see how it starts to get,
Yeah.
A lot of that
softer.
stuff. So I don't have to sit
Mhm.
there and sculpt all that little detail. I can just, granted, I'm not going to use this for this actual concept. I'll approach it differently, but just for the sake of this demo, let's
Sure.
say this little wooden turd ball is done, right? We're happy with it. This is dunsies. So what I'm going to do is just export my textures. I'm going to get it set up the way that I want. So I'm not going to go into all of the specifics. I'm going to set up as PBR, because that's what our game reads. I'm going to define where I am sending my maps. Let's just do it to the desktop. Create a new folder. Let's just call it textures with a Z, because I'm cool. Okay. And it's just one guy. So I'm gonna go down here. I don't really need emissive or height. I don't need metal. So I'm just gonna do normal, roughness, and base color for this particular one right now. Export my maps. Okay, this should be done in a second. And so I'll show you what maps actually look like. So this is what things look like. So this is how the game is going to read this object. My color, my sculptural information, and as well as some lighting information. How shiny or dull an object is, essentially. So the last step is basically Photoshop. So what I do is drop in one, and then I'm going to drop in the next two right on top. So I will just basically label this D for diffuse, which basically means color. This one will be rough. This one will be normal. For normal, I always have to go into my channels and I have to flip my green. So I have to invert it, which I don't think it inverted it. Let me see. No, it didn't invert it. Let me see what's going on. There we go.
Does that, if you don't do that, does it come in with your normals reversed completely? So up is down, down is up?
Yeah, I'll show you. So see, here's the difference. You can see how it's carved in.
Oh yeah.
The light is on the top, whereas this one, it's the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would invert the visuals on the object itself.
Yeah, your normal is anything that pops out will look like it's sunk in. Anything that's sunk in. Yeah. That's just kind of something. Here's a rough. I'll just make a very crude spec real quick. I'll just invert it, and then I'll just kind of do something like that because it's wood. I don't really want it to be too shiny. But, hold on. Do that one more time. That's fine. Yeah. So that would basically be it. So what I would do is I would just save this 4K file out as a master file, a master Photoshop file. And then I would basically size this down, this whole image down, which I think for these trebuchet balls, let me see what the size of them compared to a human would be. I don't know. I'll do them at 10. I'll do them at 1024, and we can always shrink them down if we need to. Tyler will just do that. So then basically what I would do is just export these out separately. So I would just save as, and our editor reads targas. So I would just name them. I would name them, let's see, weapon underscore Tuatha underscore. We have a specific naming convention for all of our objects.
Okay.
So that when we search for something, the first thing I type in is weapon. So all my weapons are going to pop up. Then I'll get realm specific. So then I got all my Tuatha weapons popped up. And then I'll go into like Treb. Help me out with Trebuchet. How do I spell it? Trebuchet.
Thet, yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I've got Trebuchet. Then I'll go say ammo _001. And then I'll have to underscore what this map actually is. So this is my color. So I'll just do D for diffuse. Say that out. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing for the rest. And that is basically it. Once that's done, I will go ahead and import my low poly mesh. I'll put that FBX into the editor, followed by all of these maps that I've made, and then I'll just look at it in the game. And yeah, that's basically it. That's how I make things. In a nutshell.
It's informative nutshell.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Well, cool.
Thanks a lot. I mean, I'm definitely. I saw. I think it was Strike in chat was saying that we definitely have a greater appreciation for balls in the game.
Yeah,
but just
small
any
round objects.
any of those designed objects,
anything.
because we don't normally think about how many steps and how much work goes into making that. It's like it's just a ball. It just
Yeah.
Dude, I cannot play video games. I can't.
Yeah, all you
see.
see, it's like the Matrix.
Yeah.
All you see is the code.
I tried Uncharted, whichever one of the latest
Yeah.
Uncharted ones. And it's like I'm stuck staring at this beautiful wall that someone I knew took like 2-3 weeks just to make this stupid wall that you drive by in a theme. You
Yeah.
drive by it in like 2 seconds. And I'm just I'll stop and jump out and look at this damn thing. People shooting at me. And I'm like, man, how did they get the opacity so sharp and
You walk
and I
up
mean
to the wall and like look down the length of it to see how the normals are reflecting
I do.
in the light. And
that's take me 2 years to play
Yeah.
one game. But and Tyler and a lot of other people, they've got the exact same problem. It's just we'll get stuck on the eye candy and like, I wonder how they got that looking like that, or maybe they should have done this instead. I'll get a lot of that. Like I'll see seams in like AAA games, and I'm like, ooh, you had 150 people working on this one thing, and y'all still missed that. Like I would get yelled at like hardcore.
Yeah.
But it happens. Like I've seen like obvious seams on like Dark Souls, Devil May Cry. Like you can see through the corner of the main character's eye. Like they how do you miss that? So stuff, but normal people don't pay attention to.
yeah,
You know.
Because you're immersed in the game and you miss the details when you're immersed in the details.
Yeah. Like just only Tyler says this all the time. Like only artists are gonna notice this. You know, like a normal gamer is just gonna play through it and enjoy the game, not criticize every single little tiny thing that we obsess over.
Did it ruin games for you or?
No. I said so. Like I was saying to you guys earlier, I'm in front of my PC, all day.
Yeah.
For I usually work, 10-hour, 11-hour days, if not longer sometimes. So I'm in front of my PC all the time, and by the time I get home, I need to detox a bit, and especially on the weekends, I'm going to go out and get into nature and kind of clear my head. So what I do instead of playing games, if I'm burnt out on my music, because I'll listen to music while I do my art, I'll actually put on like walkthroughs, like no commentary walkthroughs of games that I'm interested in, like Bloodborne or whatever. And I'll sculpt a little bit, take a break. I'm like, ooh, that's awesome. Sculpt a little bit, kind of, and that's kind of how I get my game fix.
So you play the game through other people's walkthroughs.
Yeah.
I live vicariously through
streamers and
sometimes, especially like in winter, like when it's stupid cold and I'm kind of stuck in on the weekend. I will go and play some games. A lot of times I'll end up going like old school though. I've got some killer emulators where I'll like hit up some SNES, and just reminisce about the good old days, It's super
I
fun.
probably still have my Xbox, my Game Boy is still somewhere in a cardboard box at my parents.
Probably still running like a champ
like
too.
the first one, not even color.
Yeah. Oh
The
yeah.
actual first model.
I saw one like caught on fire and melted, like it from a house
Yeah.
fire, and it's still running. Like,
Oh yeah, no, it's
that's just like a champ.
those were
Yeah. Do that to a PS4, see what happens.
Yeah.
water on the PS4.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Was there like anything else you guys had question wise with the pipeline and art specifically? Because I didn't go over everything. Obviously, there's still a lot of different ways to approach different models. That was just a simple sphere. But
I mean that covered mostly what I was wanting, because I just really thought it would be beneficial for a lot of us who aren't familiar with that process, just to see some glimpse into some of the work that goes in, and how much time it takes to really invest in and build out things that are as simple as a piece of ammunition that most of us aren't really going to see up close because it's just flying through the air.
Right. Yeah. And
like,
sometimes I'll overdo it with the details. I'll put a little bit too much that no one's ever going to notice. It's just kind of
just for personal satisfaction.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when Michelle was streaming her concept arts, I've seen comments asking why they were taking so much time just for the concept. And like that's the kind of insight. If you don't know what it means, what it's all about, it's interesting because you don't hear from the artists most of the time. You hear a lot more from the engineers, the devs, and not so much on the artist side. So it's a good insight.
Yeah, well, we're trying to put as much love as we can within the time that we're given.
Yeah.
Being such a small team, it can be stressful. It can be difficult, even as artists. You think, hey, you've got the best job in the world. You get to make all this cool stuff, but yet, you've got really tight deadlines. You gotta whip it out. You gotta make stuff work, problem solve, just like the programmers. We gotta problem solve stuff too. Even concept, they gotta design stuff to where hey, this can actually function correctly for animators. And a lot of times they'll pass off to me, and I'll do a lot of that problem solving to make sure, because drawing something in 2D might not always work in 3D. Yeah. So a lot of that stuff is me having to figure out how this fits to this. It may look cool in the drawing, but it may not work, fitting something to the human and maintaining that silhouette without it looking weird, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of what they're getting, dude, those concept people, they still are just crazy fast. I mean, the stuff you see on the weekly updates, not just from what I produce, but from them, that's only a little bit of what we do during the week. That's just stuff we're finished up to a point to where we actually want to show it. A lot of the other stuff we're doing in the background is just like work in progress. We'll touch on this a little bit, touch on this until finally, it's ready. But yeah, I mean, we've got stuff we've been working on that's like Tina, she's making stuff that's like 3 weeks down the road that, I'm not going to see it until, next month and a half, probably. Yeah. So, that's just kind of it. Hopefully we're going to get some more art people hired on, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And make my life a little easier.
I know.
I know having the second concept has really taken a lot off of Michelle and Tina's picked up on it so fast. She's done such great work. And Michelle doesn't have to like hover over her, to like make sure she just kind of lets her. She's building that trust very fast with her skill.
Right.
And so, yeah, if I was able to get someone like that to help me out as well, which we've got now, you guys can look forward to getting a lot more a lot more into the game, a lot more
Which is
put
awesome.
into the games. So should
All
be
right.
cool.
Sounds good. Well, again, we've kept you here for a long time, so I definitely appreciate you being here. I do have one other last question. I usually like to leave off on a bit of a softball
Sure.
question, and so I was originally going to ask what you were most excited about working on, but I think through conversation you already kind of covered that because I'm assuming it's character models
Oh yeah.
and characters.
So fun.
So related to that, I have to ask, being someone who wants to play the Sturm, are you on Team Butt Wings or not Team Butt Wings?
Yeah, man, that's tricky. I mean, I'm pretty sure we can get butt wings to actually work in terms of like armor and stuff. I mean, they're just gonna stick out of armor,
Yeah.
obviously, but I mean, it's different. I guess
That's
I'll
sounding
back-
anti-butt wings to me.
I'll back Michelle. I'll give butt wings a try. I like that they can fold into like a skirt. I think that's really neat.
It's a cool idea.
However, the practicality in having them animate, I don't know if that's gonna be.
It looks more pixie-ish.
I still remember the really old models where they had where they were actually in game and they had them flapping and everything.
Yeah, as you were running.
I don't know. I mean, in terms of our general like characters that we haven't made yet, you know, they were designed and sketched out like a long time ago. So what I would like to do is hopefully get Tina, because she's really good at like character stuff as well. Maybe get her. I would get Michelle to do it, but she's really been swamped with the graphic novel and also the UI stuff. I'd like to get her to do it, but maybe get Tina to come in and start like honing in and designing them out, flushing them out a little more, bringing them up.
That's something I wanted to ask also, actually. The races and the ones where we have only concept art so far, are you gonna try to maybe not specifically redesign them because in terms of visual, but are you gonna rework a bit the concepts before going into the actual sculpting of it? Or are the concepts right now more of a base, or is it actually how it's going to look?
Well, so far they've been kind of just a jumping off point. Like for the golems and the Fearbog, when I did those, you know, I like the design, but I don't know, it felt a little cartoony, and the aesthetic I like, which I guess you can kind of see it since I started working. The aesthetic I like the more dark kind of grungy feel, like Dark Souls kind of, you know, that kind of look. So I kind of, you know, mixed it up a bit with their designs. I took some liberties. I mean, the whole time I was doing it, you know, I always would get Michelle's approval. You know, I'm not just going behind her back and saying, I don't like this, I'm going to do this my way. You know, there's nothing like that. I'm just like, you know, let me take a crack at it. Let me put a little bit of love into it, and then we'll go from there. And so I did that. I get Michelle's look on it. She was like, that's cool, but what if we did this? And so I'm like, okay, that's cool, because she's killer at design. And so from there, you know, we just keep kind of going and finessing and working, because we don't really have an art director here. You know,
Tyler, who's also the producer.
I mean, he's producing environment, office stuff. You know, we don't have that, so it's kind of up to me and concept, with Tyler coming in every now and then to, you know, figure out the look of the game and how we really want it to, you know, make sure everything's cohesive. Like, we don't have this outlandishly cartoonish sword next to this like dirty grungy hero guy. You know, but yeah, so in terms of the designing of the future characters, I would definitely want Tina or Michelle, you know, one of the concept, whoever's got time, to go in, really, you know, start thinking about what our game looks like now, and kind of trying to design them to look more up to date. and plus there's certain things that I'll have to, like, kind of problem solve in terms of like armor. Like divergers have those crazy crystal spike things, so I'll have to figure out, these swap when you put a pauldron on. Otherwise you're going to have crystals shooting through a damn pauldron. Same for like frost giants with the spikes on the head and on the back. So things like that, we got to think about. Even little subtle things like on here, let me just show you guys real quick.
There's one thing that I hope, well, I know it's probably a big challenge because I don't know how designing all those things work, but one thing that's kind of a pet peeve for me is clipping. In armor.
That's inevitable. I've tried to I've tried to make these things the best of my ability to where like they all stay in a specific region.
Of course.
But even then, when your character is doing,
there's gonna be some bit of clipping. But I've seen armors. That's the good thing about going for a more realistic feel than the more fantasy side. I've seen armors where like the color is sticking almost all the way back to the top of the head, sticking through the hair, and the hair is sticking from the back of the armor, or things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's I'm gonna try my best to get us to where we avoid it. But look, like even subtle stuff like this, like this right here can pose a big problem. Like what happens when you equip a pair of pants or
I can imagine,
So I would try to hug it a little more to the body, even though we would lose that nice silhouette. But like it's little subtle things that you just don't think about until you actually get in there and build it, So, granted, butt wings and stuff like that.
That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, it'll be a little more obvious than others, but that's one of the things I have to do. Once we get someone else, taking some of the load off of me, then I can start putting, most of my focus into, a lot of these guys. So soon, it's going to happen soon. It's going to go, hopefully it's going to go nice and fast and nice and smooth. And, hopefully we'll have a good intern who can help fit some of the armors to these characters, and then we can just throw them on in and get you guys playing and run around. Should be pretty cool. So
looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too, man. I can't wait.
I can imagine.
I can't wait to get the Giants in. Those are going to be fun. Going to be super fun. Yeah, but
absolutely
not too bad.
Well, I do want to just give huge props to the whole art team, and thank you again for coming out and joining us and talking about the art process and answering all of our questions, inane or otherwise.
It's been fun, man. I mean, I'll try to see if we can get some other ones to join you guys, some other artists.
Absolutely, greatly appreciate it.
Love to.
For everybody that's joined us watching and in chat, thanks for your questions and your conversation. And if you're joining us for the first time, feel free to follow the channel, or if you're watching the recording later on, like and all that stuff. Otherwise, we will be back in 2 weeks for episode 72. Until then, we will catch some of you during the week or at another time.
Test. Yep.
And